Sports professor Rick Horrow, welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, the show that goes beyond the trillion-dollar business of sports. Legal, business, marketing, a whole host of things, and especially after Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody's working out and has taken care of what Black Friday bestowed on us and Thanksgiving as well. For the first time last week, and especially Cyber Monday, Ticketmaster and Fanatics teaming up for a long-term industry-first partnership. The official verified tickets and licensed merchandise into the fan shopping experience of both sides. And Black Friday, by the way, broke records of $6.22 billion in online sales. It'll be interesting to see how Cyber Monday tallies on sports sites and elsewhere. It is a busy week. It's a busy week for a lot of reasons. The NFL heading into the home stretch. College football, can't wait for who's in and who's out for the playoffs. Obviously a big deal. The bottom line is this is a time of year where sports business and law and marketing really important. If you want to see all of our list of the top 15, plus the top 5 tech and the top 5 power of sports, philanthropy issues, horrorsports.com, NBC Washington, a host of places, and subscribe to our podcast on Apple and look for us on Stitcher, Google Play, Audio Boom, and the like. An amazing holiday, and before we get into some of the other business issues that are happening, a late-breaking idea of people doing great by doing good. We cover that all the time, but somebody who will take at the beginning of the interview at the podcast, it's an incredible name, the Chopra family. Deepak Chopra's son, Gotham, has a company that he has been partners with Michael Strahan, Tom Brady. It's called The Religion of Sports, sports media company, created to explore sports' spiritual dimension and why sports matters, basically, along with a company called Cadence 13, the Religion of Sports series, talking about sacrifice, leadership, rehabilitation, belonging, authenticity, a whole bunch of stuff that it can be tackled only by a global icon, Gotham Chopra, and some of his partners, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Kobe Bryant, James Andrew Miller, and others. So at the beginning of the show around Thanksgiving week, I give you Gotham Chopra.
Rick Horrow, inside the boardroom, beyond the scoreboard, trillion-dollar sports business, news, marketing, deal-making, a whole host of issues. It is rare that you have someone who can transform sports, wellness, entrepreneurialism, lifestyle, whole bunch of stuff, obviously a great pedigree. But without further ado, understanding that the key to the business is also how you deal around it, and from the media perspective as well. Gotham Chopra, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit about the venture, about the process, and kind of where are you and why is what you offer so unique?
Sure. So the company is called Religion of Sports, and, it originally started as a series, a television series that continues. It's actually about to launch our third season on Audience Network. The sort of vision was always, why sports matter. And I've been a huge lifelong sports fan. I grew up in Boston, so, Patriots, Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics, etc. Passionate sports fan. But I also grew up around my father, Deepak Chopra, and the wellness and spirituality industry, so to speak. And so I always kind of felt, everything that my father spoke about and I was exposed to in that industry and in that life, I was experiencing sports and I just loved it. And sports is, to me, a religion. It's a community of people with whom you share, values and passions and all of that. So the show kind of stemmed out of that. We, do 6 original hours every year in terms of just exploring different sports communities all around the planet and why sports matter. And then over time, over the last 2 years, we've really expanded it from just being a television series to somewhat of a production engine. We produce other shows for Facebook and Showtime, I work with athletes like Tom Brady and LeBron James. Both Tom Brady and Michael Strahan are partners, not only in the original show, but now in the broader business. And that's kind of where we are. We just recently launched a podcast. And, yeah, it's the same fundamental DNA, which is, why sports matter and really tapping into those passions and understanding why people sometimes have an irrational, connection to sports, whether you're an athlete or a fan.
There's another perspective to it. Clearly, Gautam Chopra is with us today. It's the doing great by doing good. We know that philanthropy has increased about 12% in the annual evaluation of the relative pieces of the sports business. And when I talk to a lot of the CEOs on my Power of Sports stuff on Fox and otherwise, it's, clearly doing the right thing. But there is now a conscious tie that branding, philanthropy, giving the right charitable orientation can increase your ROI as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think just, we live in some pretty crazy times right now. And, we're very polarized in this country politically and otherwise. And so sports is one of the places in which oftentimes, even though there's been a history of sports and politics mingling as well. But, in general, sports is a place, at least for those 3-4 hours during a game, that communities can come together despite their many differences. And I think a lot of people recognize that. A lot of brands recognize that. Sports are very sort of integrated at the local level into their communities with youth groups and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of goodwill in this industry. Look, like you opened, you said $1 trillion industry. I mean, there's a lot of money, and sports rights are one of the last places in the television business where you're continuing to see growth. Everyone else has moved into like the on-demand business, but I think there's a lot of great energy and goodwill, and that's something that deserves more focus.
Energy and goodwill is sometimes hard to quantify, but yet really, really important. From your dad's perspective, obviously yours too, and your partners, you hear a lot of hue and cry in the traditional punditry that athletes are not role models, or they choose to pick athletes that are, because of their behavior, not role models, and blow it, some would say, out of proportion. What's your take on all that?
Yeah, my take is like athletes are human beings, and oftentimes in the news we focus on the ones who have had problems, et cetera. But the vast majority of professional athletes, certainly collegiate athletes, et cetera, are good people and are doing great work. That doesn't mean they're perfect. And I think that, there's also been a history of great, Bill Russell, I just finished a series called Shut Up and Dribble, which is on Showtime. And in that we track, athletes who have been activists. And so Bill Russell is an example of somebody who, arguably is the most dominant player in the history of professional basketball, but it was also a civil rights activist at the same time. And so I think, and today you see, LeBron James, who's probably the best player of his generation for sure, and he's outspoken. And that's not to say that, there's other people who aren't, more engaged in their communities and making a huge difference, but it does matter when people of a certain profile provide a platform for others. And so I think, that's one of the great things about certain athletes, and again, something that should be recognized and celebrated, and not to diminish, some of the tremendous problems that do exist in the industry, but, I don't think it's a either-or situation.
Business show, business perspective, I know you share some of this as well. Every athlete seemingly has a foundation. Some do it right, some do it wrong. Some take too much money for administration. Some give to the wrong causes. Some expose the foundations to higher liability than otherwise, and on and on and on. What's your kind of surefire, proven, experiential set of business tips on doing the right thing through creating foundations?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, and I think, so much of these guys have so much going on in their lives, and so it's easy to sort of fall into some of the traps that, come with that because you just lose attention. I think, it's the analogy between sports and the rest of life, I think, is often, very helpful, and it's surrounding yourself with a great team and choosing the right people, because you can't, be on top of every single thing all at the same time. So it's really, if you, if your weakness on your basketball team is a three-point shot, then you go get three-point shooters. If you're starting a foundation or a philanthropic endeavor, then go find people with the experience and the credibility and the track record who have done that successfully. So, I very much believe it's the same thing in my business. I'm a filmmaker, a storyteller, and it's not all about me. It's surrounding myself with the right editors and writers and producers and all of that. And so, I think it's building the team, having, and keeping it tight and being efficient.
Gautam Chopra, specifically, talk about kind of your world as a filmmaker and how you feel about your obligation/opportunity, two different thoughts, of increasing the visibility of doing good, changing the world, affecting the world through sports.
Yeah, so, my business and industry it's the media, and I'd say it's, even beyond sports, is undergoing enormous transformation, just, the advancement of technology, social media, it's just so different than it was, say, 10, 20 years ago in terms of distribution, even production, cameras, et cetera. So, but at the heart of it, there's still storytelling, the ability to tell good stories, and there's a certain formula to that requires training and savvy and stuff like that. So I think that's the opportunity in terms of what's out there. I think obligation, it's an interesting thing. It's like I've grown up. This goes back to my other part of my life. The spirituality, the world of spirituality. It's about service, and I was taught from a very young age is what are you contributing? What are you putting out into the world? And so that's always sort of been the DNA, and I think we've tried to bring it to this company. Look, we're a for-profit company, and we're trying to sort of build, and, I've got great supporters and investors and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the sort of soul of the company is about telling stories that matter and showing and, empowering, inspiring. Again, that doesn't mean everything is just sort of, blue sky, but, we try to sort of find stories that, are transformative and that inspire people. And, why I love sports is because it's about human potential. It's mythical. It's about being the best version of ourselves. And so those are the types of story that we, try to tell and the audience that we're trying to connect with.
All right, understanding that this is maybe a little evergreen, so this might not be aired this week, so we'll have a chance to validate and verify the following. Are the Patriots going to win another Super Bowl?
Man, it's tough right now, but, Patriots have a history of sort of dealing with adversity, and Tom is a good friend, and so I have a lot of confidence in him. We've seen this past week when they got beaten pretty bad by the Titans, but, it wasn't so great, but, I feel good. I always feel good with this guy.
All right. Do you lend a calming spiritual influence to the sports teams that you care about? Do you make them play better just by being around you?
I would like to think so, but there's a part of me that's pretty in touch with my primordial self. You might not want to see me, during the World Series a couple weeks ago, or actually against that ALCS against the Astros. I can get pretty tense, tribal, I would say.
Well, listen, the good thing about Gautam Chopra is obviously a world of unique experience, but he knows his limitations, and he probably can't hit a curveball, and he certainly can't hit Chris Sale. Rick Horrow, speak with you soon. Interesting perspective we don't have normally on our shows as we head back into the relatively mundane of who wins the Heisman and the college football playoffs and who's the rushing leader of the NFL for the season. It is good to keep that kind of perspective. Let's just say that. Couple of other breaking stories. First of all, an event we're going to talk about more and more and more as we get closer to it. The Beach Volleyball Major Series announces that longtime partner AutoNation, the presenting sponsor for the 19 Fort Lauderdale Major, America's only five-star beach volleyball tournament 2019, held on February 5 through 10 this next year, officially named the Fort Lauderdale Major presented by AutoNation. They're America's largest automotive retailer and previously sponsored major series events in Lauderdale in 15, 17, and 18. AutoNation will also have activation on site at the Beach Village. Beach Major CEO Hannes Jagerhofer said, "We're thrilled to welcome back our friends from AutoNation for the 19 tournament in Lauderdale and proud to have their name in the event's title. loyal partners for the past 3 events in Lauderdale, and looking forward to what promises to be another hugely exciting event. The Fort Lauderdale Major, presented by AutoNation, the first beach volleyball major series tournament of the 19 season. Olympic and world champions will meet for the first time of the year. Title of the year will be decided, and a share of $600,000 in prize money. And AutoNation's 2019 presenting sponsorship definitely increased major series brand awareness, especially with it set on television, the beaches of Fort Lauderdale, Super Bowl time, getting ready for 2020. Well, speaking of getting ready, the NFL is turning a corner and getting through the home stretch, and clearly Turkey Day is one of those days that you mark the business viability of the NFL. Guess what? Doing pretty well. Nielsen said the Thanksgiving game viewership up 17% this year. CBS, Fox, and NBC all saw gains, about 26.5 million average viewers across those games. The Cowboys-Redskins in the late afternoon window on Thursday led the way, 30.7 million viewers, 30.5 million on TV alone, up 16% from the 23 million in the last year's window, the Chargers and Cowboys. CBS, 26.5% for that first game, the Bears and the Lions, in the early window Thursday, up from 24.7 million for comparable Vikings-Lions in the same window last year on Fox. And in prime time, the Falcons-Saints drew a total audience of about 21.9 million, the Nets' best Thanksgiving game since the Bears-Packers in 2015. Yeah, we all love some pigskin with our turkey, and these numbers have to be really encouraging for the NFL as it winds down the regular season and looks to the playoffs. Well, it is time to honor somebody, and the guy who basically created the Texans in Houston, Bob McNair, died at 81 of cancer. He dealt with skin cancer for years and undergoing more intensive treatments for that illness and other forms of the disease since 2013. Bob McNair has caused the family ownership to remain the same. His wife, Janice, will assume the ownership role of the new Texans, and their son, Texans chairman and CEO Cal McNair, will be left in charge of daily operations. Roger Goodell said he cared deeply about the league and generous with his time and willingness to share his insights, an exceptional businessman. He's adamant that they'll remain firmly in control of the Texans, and the family will. It's worth noting, by the way, that David Tepper just paid $2.3 billion for the Carolina Panthers. The McNairs spent $600 million to found the Texans in 1999. Clearly a good investment, but Bob McNair was an incredible steward, and obviously more than that as well. Take a look at some other NFL issues. By the way, they returned to Mexico City after this year's last-minute audible. The Monday Night Football matchup between the Chiefs and Rams pulled out due to poor field conditions. We know that. But it would have marked the third straight year a regular season game was played at the iconic Estadio Azteca. And shortly after the game, which had been moved to L.A., Roger Goodell and Mexico President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador met and confirmed the 2019 game. The date of the game and the participating teams won't be known until the schedule released. And earlier this year, the league announced an extensive partnership with the Mexico Ministry of Tourism to stage an annual game south of the border through 2021. While this football diplomacy won't directly ease current border tensions in Tijuana caused by the Honduran migrant influx there, the goodwill from America's private sector may ultimately influence the Mexican government to better cooperate with the Trump administration on this issues and others. Certainly good for football transborder. That we know. Other NFL issue, pretty interesting. Roger Staubach and Alan Page received the Presidential Medal of Freedom at the White House. Former Cowboy quarterback and Vikings defensive tackle were among Donald Trump's first 7 Medal of Freedom nominees and honorees. The group also included Elvis Presley, Babe Ruth. Staubach served in the Navy during the Vietnam War prior to an 11-year career with the Cowboys that produced 2 Super Bowl titles in the 70s, 22,700 yards and 2,264 yards and 20 touchdowns before retiring in 1979, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 85. Page played 15 NFL seasons with the Vikings and the Bears and named Defensive Player of the Year and Most Valuable Player in 1971. 9-time Pro Bowler. Page was also the NFL Defensive Player of the Year twice, 71 and 73. But, even maybe more important, he was later inducted into the Hall of Fame in 88, and after his retirement from football, he embarked on a legal career and served for more than 2 decades as a Minnesota Supreme Court justice. These two versatile football legends are more than deserving of an honor that is reserved for people who've made an especially meritorious contribution in the U.S. Football, incredibly diverse this week. Other issue let's cover this week is golf. Well, the match, everybody had their opinion as to whether it was boring and whether you tinkered with it, but it was also a production technology showcase as much as it was a match on golf on Black Friday. We're talking about Capital One's The Match, Tiger and Phil. The $9 million one-on-one showdown in Vegas featured some of the sport's most revolutionary technology. Before the match, Turner Sports said it would introduce the first-of-its-kind integrations centered on predictive data, camera angles delivered by drone, and live betting odds during a marquee sporting event for the first time for U.S. viewers. Top tracer shot tracking showing real-time trajectory and flight path, and virtual eye real-time animations will be shown during the broadcast, and it was. Unique characteristics of Shadow Creek, Las Vegas, and the course. Unfortunately, the technology that broke down for Turner and its carriage partners was the ability to actually deliver the match to digitally to paid subscribers, resulting in tens of thousands of dollars in refunds issued to angry golf fans. But I think what it does is create a tradition that'll be ongoing for years to come. Not necessarily Phil versus Tiger, but some kind of special golf event over the Thanksgiving weekend. Hey, remember the Skins game? Maybe coming back. The Zozo Championship is preparing to debut next year as Japan's first ever PGA Tour event. One of the fastest growing online business companies in the country will title sponsor the 78-player tournament October 24 through 27. They're planning a unique twist on the golf event, though details haven't been released. Like to abundantly use the tournament, making it fashionable and technological, something the world hasn't seen. So they're talking about technology as well. From the sound of it, the Zozo Championship will take a page from the playbooks of Wimbledon and the U.S. Open, which have both long blended sport and fashion in the tennis realm. Good for us, another international event for the PGA Tour. Let's end on soccer, especially since the MLS season is right in the thick of its playoffs. Don Garber and the other MLS leaders already looking towards significant changes to this year's schedule. The Athletic said one of the biggest changes would see the regular season shortened in conjunction with a more measured playoff schedule. The current MLS schedule sees the regular season go from March to October, followed by 6-week playoff leading to the final in December. The tentative plan would see the MLS final played before November's international break. Those specific dates haven't been disclosed. Playing the MLS Club final prior to the international break would likely set the final somewhere between November 8 to 15, depending on the year. Sources confirmed the regular season would end prior to the October international break. Decision day in 2019 being held October 6. Another significant change expected to be made is the removal of the home and away legs in favor of a single elimination during the playoffs. This schedule, however, could be problematic in 2022, the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, that's set to kick off on November 21, but that's really messed up a lot of different schedules, clearly not just the MLS. Audi Field, a management company doing a great job overseeing it, the 20,000-seat capacity stadium, features a partnership between DC United and the global commercial real estate firm JLL, seamlessly integrating the staff and the venues to best practice for efficiencies in operating, on the theory that managing a commercial venue and managing a sporting venue are similar. The new stadium has 550 field-level suites and 1,500 club seats. They're all maintained by JLL, and they'll undoubtedly bring their vast knowledge from working at Capital One Arena and Kettler Iceplex to the Audi Field assignment. It benefits the entire D.C. sports facility landscape. Moving a little west to St. Louis, they continue to push forward with their MLS bid, a group of city aldermen urging the soccer team partners to go at it on their own for a proposed stadium. This comes as a first wrinkle in the city's effort to land an MLS team. The biggest issue with St. Louis's bid has been funding. Of course, it is for everybody. A soccer-specific stadium, the public reluctant to contribute millions of dollars to the cause. The team ought to own it, says certain aldermen, and another series of aldermen say the city should not be in the business of owning stadiums. It certainly doesn't help the St. Louis MLS bid, the funding argument that the Rams left the city with the White Elephant Stadium and an estimated $144 million in debt and maintenance costs when they departed St. Louis for L.A. in 2016. L.A. obviously really looking forward to their new building with the Chargers and the Rams, and St. Louis has got to figure out what they want to do. Across the pond, finally, the United States Supreme Court legalized sports gambling, and the UK is exploring measures of its own. John Wall Street said the Board of Remote Gambling Association met recently to discuss the matter of self-regulation, a preemptive attempt to stave off industry-crippling government legislation within the UK, and mobile and digital gambling have boomed as of late in the UK, spurring a massive strike in gambling-related sports betting advertising during matches and on soccer clubs' jerseys as bookmakers increasingly compete for more market share. If the gaming companies won't self-govern, perhaps the media companies selling the spots will follow Sky's lead and do it for them, John Wall Street added. Sky Sports, by the way, reportedly earns around $262 million per year in advertising money from licensed sports books, so it remains to be seen whether or not the network would impose any kind of ban. And finally, as it relates to the soccer folks across the pond, a lot of discussions about whether there would be another league or at least an opportunity for a league that is above the fray as far as a super league. Well, a week after rumors broke concerning the potential new super league in Europe, two of the continent's most powerful soccer officials shot down the idea as fiction, according to the BBC. The UEFA president and the European Club Association chair were united on the topic. The Super League will not happen, they said. There's no room for wiggle room there. It's in a way a fiction and now a dream. I can confirm we've never seen, never discussed, never been involved in the creation of any documents. We are fully engaged with UEFA in shaping the game going forward. The league would effectively replace the Champions League with 11 of the competition's 16 clubs being mainstays with 5 others invited as special guests. A completely separate new 32-team competition is expected to be rubber-stamped next month at the UEFA meeting, though the Super League clearly out of the question, at least for now. Well, I got a whole lot of stuff going on. Can't wait for the college football playoff to be announced and to begin. We'll talk about that next week. We'll talk about the NHL and NBA continuing its next step. Talk about going bowling, which bowls matter, which ones don't. NFL continuing its juggernaut after Thanksgiving. Golf, NASCAR puts it away, at least for a little while. But a lot going on, especially beginning of December. We want you to join us. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank Dan Martin and Tanner Simpkins for putting this together. Thank you for listening. And thank you for joining us as we go Beyond the Scoreboard.